Next up, let's queer up the worldview. New study revealed record-breaking 44% Gen Z identify as queer. New surveys revealed that nearly half of Gen Z age 18 to 24 now identify as not fully straight, highlighting significant change in sexual orientation among younger generations. Commissioned by Durex, that is the condom company, the Global Sex Survey interviewed 29,000 adults across 36 countries, finding that 44% of young participants embraced a sexual orientation beyond heterosexual. The surge in this non-heterosexual identification aligns with a broader trend of increasing acceptance with support for same-sex relationships, rising 34% since 2006. Despite this process, disparities remain across countries. While 69% of respondents in the Netherlands and Spain support same-sex relationships, the percentage is only 66% in the UK. Earlier this year, a survey by the Public Religion Research Institute revealed that Gen Z is more likely to identify as queer than as Republican. Specifically, 28% of Gen Z identify as LGBTQ, compared to just 21% who identify as Republican. Gallup data shows that in the U.S., bisexuality is the most common LGBTQ identity. However, the increased visibility of queer individuals has also led to heightened discrimination. According to YouGov, nearly half of LGBTQ youth ages 16 to 24 have faced bullying related to their sexual orientation or gender identity, underscoring the challenge that persists despite growing acceptance. Well, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, and I must say again, I'm so happy to have the youth story as I'm so young. But more importantly, a babe, that's right. Yeah. That's right. The part that I really find interesting is the bisexual part, but let me jump to not fully straight. That is such a wonderful tagline. And when I was doing my men's classes, I would try and tell them that as we age, you know, your sex changes, your sexuality, how you perform, what you like. You know, there's a mentality that feels like I did it this way when I was 18 and I'm going to do it this way until I'm 94. That's not life. That's not reality. Mm-hmm. So to see that there's a shift, I can really appreciate that. To the bisexual part, you know, it's sad to say, but in this country, especially during the 80s and the 90s, people that identified as bisexual, they were villainized. Oh, you can't make up your mind. You know, you don't know what you really want to be. Oh, you're secretly this. And I appreciate that as the alphabets have continued to grow, you know, we have pansexual, we have asexual, we have all of these different things. But let people be who they are.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, you know, while we have some shared experiences, you don't know what I feel.
Powerful.
And so we need to be mindful that we are all human. And my tag for this year is showing grace, extending it to others, but also extending it to myself.
Yes. Oh, powerful. You know, powerful.
I love the fact that you're really supporting the messaging behind that fluidity, right? Mm-hmm. We could talk about the Kinsey sex skills, but one of the things that I really want to focus on is like the rigidity behind the messaging as we try to put these kids in boxes or make them try and reach for one that they can construct. 45%, based on the Trevor Project, 45% of the youth have reported on at least having thoughts of suicide. And I'm wondering if that's because of the rigidity that comes from some of the messaging surrounding them trying to figure themselves out. It's supposed to be about learning right there in school to learn. They're supposed to be growing in their own respect and right? Like give them some space, let them breathe.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think one of the things that really struck me with this story is that the fact that people are identifying as more people, I should say, from in that age range are identifying as something other than straight, heterosexual, to me indicates definitely the acceptance, because I don't think the numbers have really changed. Like when in our day, it was just as many people, but they were scared to identify. So that is a good sign. But then you wonder, because listen, I'm sure all of us, and I know for sure I was horribly bullied in school. It was horrific. And you bring up a really good point, because, you're dealing with enough as a teenager, going to school and trying to figure out your identity and, your way, and then dealing with the bullying on top of it. So we do have to be very careful with that.
Seeing this survey reminded me, there was a book, 15 or 20 years ago about like Generation Q or something. Yeah. And it was how all queer kids, they're not going to use certain terms. They're all going to identify their own individual thing, which was allegedly what my generation was going to do. And then we ended up deciding we were like, we'll use the gay term, we'll use lesbian, whatever, And I see this and I'm like, I think it's perfectly fine for young people to say they identify however they want. And as you were saying earlier, we'll see where they are in 10 or 20 years. There shouldn't be any pressure to have that identity. And I say that because I remember a cousin of mine when he was 13 told me he was polyamorous, and I did not. I was a little ignorant at the time. I thought he said he was into polygamy, and I was like,
oh my God.
I was like, you're too young for that. What? I had to Google it. And then it meant that he was into all genders. Yeah. But then, as I'm not going to name this particular relative before any family sees it, they were very trying to insist that they were queer. They've only dated girls. They just can't. And there's nothing wrong with that, of trying to have a more open definition, because honestly, does anyone really want to be a heterosexual?
Well, I think the part of the story that I think is just reflective of the society as a whole is, they use that, queer versus Republican. The largest affiliation of voters are independent. The largest affiliation for religion now is agnostic or no religious affiliation. Yeah. Being part of some of the, when I worked with PFLAG, the youth that was, here at SunServe, the youth group here, they would, again, the biggest component of that youth group was they didn't want to identify in a box. Mm-hmm. So the trend is kind of a deconstruction of the societal norms of that you have to put every single person in a box for everything. Politics, religion, gender, sexuality. And this generation and younger generations, they are rejecting that construct. Yeah. And I think that this story, perfectly displays that.
Yeah, the labeling, always wanting to say, they're white, they're black, that's a man, that's a boy, having to label things. And it's just society, and that's what we live with. But I did want to say, oh my God, my age is going to shut down because it just went out of my head. oh, I remember. Okay. And I'm still not a day over 30.
That part.
But no, that part. But no, what I was going to say is that I noticed the younger generation, a lot of them are more accepting. They don't really bat an eye with me. It's like the older folks and the middle range that seem to still have a lot of the hang-ups. Yeah. Wow. But some of these young kids, they're so progressive. It's I was in a doctor's office yesterday, young, thugged out guy. And he's sitting in there with his music in the massage chair. And I was like, is that a massage chair? He's like, yeah. And then a few minutes went by and he says, ma'am, do you want to sit in a chair to get a massage? And I'm like, no, you enjoy it. And then he started talking to me, and it was like, yes, ma'am. No, but he's from Mississippi. So I'm like, oh dear Lord, you're making me feel old, boy. But anyway, very open.
It's funny because there's a comedian, she's like a teacher on TikTok, and she's like, oh, I love my kids. They'll respect your pronouns, but not you.
Yeah.
And it's so true.
Yes, that's true.
Well, and I think too, as I interact with people that are younger than me, it seems like now I have no choice. I was the young one, now I'm not. But what's funny is that when you meet them at their level, they're willing to communicate with you. And oftentimes people don't think I'm as old as I am. So, they're asking me to do stuff, and it's like, baby, I can't do that. Okay? I'm like, there's a lot of dying spackle. Don't worry about it. But, we're not doing all that.
I hear you.
But to your point, I would just like to say, I don't want to belabor the time, but I also think it is the older generation that is stuck.
Yeah.
And I know I said that in the other story, but it is so true. You talked about bullying. I can remember being in a gay club, you know, that is still existing. There's not a few of them. I've been here for 31 years.
Remember
But-
Sugars?
Oh, don't go there.
Remember Waterfront?
Let me yes.
Club 21?
I didn't go there. Okay, I'm just saying, no shade. But anyway, beautiful, beautiful bartender was a friend of mine, muscles on top of muscles. And we were having a conversation similar to this. And, you know, I told him, you know, at that time, bisexual. Oh, no, I've never dated a woman. I can't believe it. And there was a young lady sitting there at the bar. And he's like, well, talk to her. I'm a true Sagittarius. Do not dare me to do something because I will do it. So I turned to her, started having a conversation. There was chemistry. There was a connection. And people that know me, and my brother here knows, you're not going to get a lot of public displays of affection from me. But the girl and I actually wound up having a little make-out session there at the bar. This young guy could not believe it. We almost had to pick him up off the floor. And he got mad at me. He felt like I was betraying, you know, part of the gate. And it's like, how am I doing that? I made a connection with a person.
Yeah.
And I think that's the moral of this story is make the connection with the person that you make the connection with, and hopefully you make a good connection.
Wonderful.
Amen. Amen.